Alone in her apartment on a stormy night, Sarah heard a faint knock at the door. She checked the peephole. No one was there. She sighed, blaming the wind. But then the knock was louder this time. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Stop checking the door. I'm not there." Chills crawled down her spine. Slowly, she backed away. The knock came again, but this time, from inside the apartment. Panicked, she turned around. Her bedroom closet creaked open, revealing a figure. Her phone buzzed again. "Told you." And then, the lights went out. The room plunged into darkness, and Sarah's breath caught in her throat. Her phone slipped from her trembling hands, clattering onto the floor. She stumbled back, eyes fixed on the closet door, now wide open. The figure inside stood perfectly still, its outline barely visible in the shadows. The phone buzzed again on the floor, illuminating the room for a split second. Another message. "Run." Her heart pounded. Without thinking, she bolted for the front door, her footsteps echoing in the silence. But as her hand reached for the knob, it turned on its own. The door swung open to reveal her own apartment. The same furniture, the same dark hallway. Only she wasn't in it anymore. From the shadowy depths of the mirror across the room, her own reflection grinned back at her, stepping forward, and then the voice whispered from behind her again. "You can't run from me, Sarah. You're already home." Sarah froze, staring in disbelief as her reflection stepped toward her, smiling wickedly. She stumbled back, heart pounding, as her reflection spoke. "Why so scared? You're home now." Panicking, Sarah yanked open the door, only to find herself surrounded by endless mirrors. Every reflection of her was wrong, each one grinning, mocking her fear. Her phone buzzed. She pulled it out to see a message. "Don't look behind you." Instinct took over, and she glanced back. In the mirror, a shadowy figure with glowing eyes loomed closer, reaching for her. Her reflection whispered, "You can't escape." As the mirrors closed in, trapping her, Sarah heard her own laughter echoing all around her. She was no longer herself. She was part of them now. Sarah's heart raced as the mirrors closed in, her twisted reflections flickering in and out of view, their mocking grins faltering. The shadow with glowing eyes loomed behind her, its icy breath crawling down her neck. She tried to scream, but her body was frozen, trapped in the glass world around her. Suddenly, her phone buzzed. Trembling, she looked down at the message. "Break the mirror." Without hesitation, she swung her fist into the nearest mirror. It shattered, the glass raining down like sharp stars. Instantly, her reflections vanished, and the walls around her started to dissolve. For a brief moment, she felt hope. She could escape. But then, the shadow growled. The broken glass began to swirl, rising from the floor and reforming the mirrors faster than she could destroy them. The walls tightened again, the space shrinking. "You think you can escape me?" The shadow hissed. "I'm already inside you." Panicked, Sarah smashed another mirror, but the shadow only grew stronger, closer. Her phone buzzed again. "Run, but this time, it won't let you go." As the world around her collapsed into shards, she realized there was no way out. The real trap wasn't the mirrors. It was her. Sarah's hands throbbed, blood dripping from her knuckles as she smashed mirror after mirror. But the room only closed in tighter. The air became thick, suffocating. The distorted reflections, her twisted selves, watched with cold, gleeful eyes as the glass walls rebuilt themselves each time she broke them. Her phone buzzed again, but this time she hesitated to look. She already knew what it would say. Her fingers trembled as she glanced down at the glowing screen. "Stop fighting." The room felt like it was shrinking, the walls pressing in on her. The shadow behind her was no longer distant. It was right there, its cold breath brushing her neck. Her heart pounded in her chest, and as she tried to move, she felt something dragging her backward. "It's not real," she thought. "This can't be real." But the mirrors didn't care. They warped around her, becoming doors that led nowhere, twisting reality until up felt like down. The ground beneath her began to crack, and with a sickening jolt, the floor fell away. She was falling, plummeting into darkness. Suddenly, Sarah's eyes snapped open. She was in her bed, drenched in sweat, her chest heaving. The room was still, dark, the only light coming from the faint glow of her phone on the nightstand. Her hands were unbloodied, the walls solid. She gasped, touching her face, her arms grounding herself back in reality. A nightmare. It had been just a nightmare. The mirrors, the shadow, the phone messages. It was all a twisted creation of her mind. Relief washed over her as she let out a shaky breath. But something was wrong. Her phone buzzed. Heart pounding, she glanced at the screen. It lit up with a single new message. Did you really think it was just a dream? Her stomach dropped. Slowly, she sat up in bed, the familiar fear creeping back into her bones. The room seemed too quiet, too still. She glanced around cautiously, but everything appeared normal until her eyes landed on the mirror across the room. Her reflection stood there, motionless. But something wasn't right. It wasn't mimicking her movements. Instead, it smiled, slowly, deliberately, and tilted its head. Sarah's phone buzzed again. She didn't need to look this time. She knew what it would say. "Welcome back." The lights flickered. Her reflection stepped out of the mirror, just as it had before, but this time there was no waking up. The nightmare wasn't over. It had only just begun.